Hey everyone, it's Ted from Down the Alley. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and Old Southern Barbecue is smoking up some great deals on turkeys that are sourced locally right here in Minnesota. If you're looking to grab a delicious turkey or a fully catered meal for the holidays, visit oldsouthernbarbecue.com and place your order today. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you.
And welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And Katie.
And huge guests this week. But before we get to them, last week's episode just dropped. Hopefully you guys didn't miss it with the Moorhead Spuds. Really good interview, Ted. You that at the time of this recording, you just kind of got that up, got it done editing, and you said it was a good one.
Yeah, no, they're good guys, and you can tell they're very passionate about lacrosse. They love the game. They love being able to build something up there. Great personalities. Definitely a couple of coaches that I would love to play for myself. And it's no surprise they're doing big things up there. So that one just dropped today at the time of this recording. By the time this episode comes out, the fans here will hopefully have already listened to that. But this episode and this upcoming interview is brought to you by Old Southern Barbecue.
Joining us here on Down the Alley this morning, we got Josh Levine, founder and owner of the Fortis Academy from prestigious West Bloomington, where two of our hosts are from as well. He was a Jaguar before going on and attending Princeton. Not a big deal. Maybe that's why he's got so many books. Welcome to Down the Alley.
Thanks for having me.
Katie, did you and Josh are about the same age, or was it Ted?
He's a Ridgeview Rocket. We went to almost every grade together. You went to private school for a couple years, but then came back.
Yep.
He was our homecoming king. Not a big deal. No comments on anyone?
No comment on that?
Are we surprised? Are we surprised he was homecoming king?
There's a picture of me when I got awarded that or whatever, and my face just looks like absolute shock and horror. It's like
I think you should pull that up because it's a great picture. You had a couple years at private school, but other than that, it was like Ridgeview Rockets.
Yep.
Through Jefferson High School, class of 2007.
So for those who don't know what Fortis Academy is, what is Fortis Academy? I believe you guys started on the strength and conditioning side focused. Obviously now you've expanded, and I'm excited to hear about all the things that you've expanded into. But is the core and kind of the start of Fortis Academy, was that strength and conditioning?
Yeah, I think the story goes pretty far back. I mean, the first time I started doing training was actually in 2004, 2005. Back then, Jefferson Youth Hockey, they would send out a paper catalog of everyone's name and their address and their home phone number. And so I put together a brochure to do summer training with kids. Because I got excited about doing training back then. And so we met down at Dred Scott Fields in Bloomington. And that's literally where I started doing training. I called it Minnesota Hockey Development Program because I'm a hockey guy. And it was just the hockey people. And literally I would mail out brochures. And I think the whole summer cost parents like $15. So everyone signed up because it was, free babysitting basically at the time. And then Fortis was officially started in 2009, January, I believe, of 2009. And we started with working with Jefferson athletes at the Jefferson Activity Center. So we started with the football team, gymnastics, had a few other athletes, started growing from there. We added a hockey summer camp for a bit there. And then I went to Princeton and then moved back 8 years ago I was in Princeton for 4 years and then DC for 4. And then when I moved back, that's when, I started Fortis really full time. Before then, it was just an 8-week summer thing. I'm not really sure where this is going. And when I moved back, it was a lot of hockey because I was doing hockey on ice and I was doing the dry land training or gym training, right? Strength and conditioning work. And so a lot of the athletes were hockey. Now that percentage is dropping as we get more and more lacrosse athletes and soccer athletes and volleyball athletes, and we've kind of expanded out a little bit. So that's a brief overview of our journey. Now we have 2 gyms, and we're working with quite a few athletes on an annual basis on a whole variety of things that fall under the umbrella of player development.
What were you doing in DC? Were you doing training stuff, or did you
No,
kind of like
I coached
follow
a little bit out
career?
there. I was working for the government, and
Oh, sure.
I coached Pee Wee AA hockey for a little bit, 2 years. That was interesting. The
like
demographic out there
in DC.
What?
In like what city?
So hockey out there is like almost by county. So like I was in the
sure.
Montgomery Youth Hockey Association, MYHA, which is Montgomery County is one of the wealthiest in the country. I mean, it kind of makes Edina look look like little plebs. And so they have that size of that association was probably about the size of close to the size of Edina. There were just a ton of kids, and you have the tier 1, then you have which is the AAA. I didn't coach AAA. I coached AA, which was like what we think of as our travel associations, right? So AA, and then underneath that they have house league. But there's actually quite a few kids that play hockey out there, surprisingly, despite the traffic and the costs and everything. Was
it like DC proper? Like, were you guys in, or were you guys like in Maryland or something?
We were in Maryland. We're in Bethesda, Maryland, which is just out, like, kind of basically that first ring of suburbs just outside.
Sweet.
We loved it out there. It's, really fun, especially without kids. With kids, once we had Eliana, we just sort of decided, let's get back by the grandparents.
Yeah. DC is cool.
It is cool.
But like you said, like it's a very different culture, but like going to visit and like maybe having a couple years out there without kids would be super fun.
Yes. Yeah, we lived on the metro station for most of the time that we were there. So we would literally could wake up on a Saturday morning and be like, hey, do you want to go check out the White House and the Lincoln Monument? Yeah, sure. Okay. We'd walk down, get on the train, 20 minutes later, you're downtown,
Georgetown's super cool.
Yes.
DuPont Circle's super cool.
Yep.
If you're a foodie, definitely go.
There's good food.
Yeah, we
talk
a lot about food on our podcast. What's your favorite restaurant here? Like your go-to for you guys?
Go-to restaurant here. Well, for our family, for probably Crisp and Green.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The wraps,
with
stuff.
Kids, it's easy.
Okay, date night. Let's skip the healthy, lunch with the kids. All right, date night. Where are you taking the wife?
Oh man, a fancy spot would be like something like Cove, maybe. Yeah, Cove's nice.
We like Cove. Lobster guac.
Yeah. Anything like downtown Wayzata has some sneaky good restaurants.
Very good.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. One of my favorite restaurants in the state is down there.
Which one?
Also a Crisp and Green. Josephina.
Yeah. I've heard really good things.
One of my like all-time in the state of Minnesota. I think it is up there with a lot of other Italian ones, but I like it the best.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check it out. I've heard good things.
Do it. It's really good.
To get back on the rails, Fortis Academy, more hockey focused than I originally thought, from day one. But still had like the strength and conditioning part. Why strength and conditioning for you? Did you grow up, in a gym? Was your dad throwing weights at you? Did you just like it? Why strength and conditioning?
Yeah. My dad and I lifted a little bit together. And we had like a little weight set in the garage. But I just had a natural like proclivity to training myself. So I met Jack Blatherwick in 8th grade, or 7th, 8th grade. And so he sort of lit the fire under me, so to speak, about plyometric training and training for speed. And hey, we don't need to go in the weight room and just do weight room specific exercises that only translate to gains, underneath a barbell. Like we want to be able to sprint faster, and we want to be able to turn quicker and do all these things, right? And that will help us in the sport, not just in the weight room. So that kind of got me really excited about strength and conditioning. And personally, I really like it even more so than like sports specific training, like let's say running a hockey camp, because when you're in the gym, you can talk it's a lot easier to like talk with the athletes as they're doing their workout and get to know them and develop relationships. Whereas when you're running a practice, like you're running it, you're like on top of just getting that flow with, it doesn't just run itself, right? Like a workout, you show guys how to do the exercises, they start getting into it. You can start talking to them and developing a relationship, which just is not possible usually in the sport specific context. And so I also just had a passion for it too myself. Like I loved training myself, and I like, this is really cool how I can see myself getting more, faster, more explosive. And I wanted other people to check it out and try it. So,
how do I ask this? So last year, at the Down the Alley Coaches Summit, you spoke about, and Ted, we have that video somewhere. Is that on YouTube or is that on the Down the Alley website?
Our site, yeah.
It's on our site. Great. It was a great, like, kind of long form, discussion and presentation on, on training and how you can integrate it in the program, in your, lacrosse program. And in our case, for the lacrosse listeners, I know we might not have an hour, to, go into, how to integrate it in your program, but for the individual listener, why should a younger player start getting in the weight room, and what should they be doing if they're not on a plan yet, or if they're curious about getting started? What types of places should they be looking for, and what types of things should they be doing?
Yeah, and lacrosse is interesting because I don't think it's established. If you look at the history of it, right, it's blowing up in Minnesota. When we were in high school, it definitely, it's a totally different landscape now in terms of how many kids are playing and then the quality of the athletes that are playing, right? Like it's better and better athletes are playing lacrosse, which is great and awesome to see. But as part of that sort of history, you have with hockey in Minnesota, you have the introduction from a lot of this is from Jack Blatherwick, who trained the 1980 Olympic team, where he brought over these concepts and ideas that were originating in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, kind of plyometrics and functional training, bringing that over. And dry land in hockey, it's called dry land, right? And it becomes this like really, it's a big thing. Like you got to do your dry land, right? And some other sports have like different terminologies for it. So volleyball has like speed, agility, and quickness, right? It's like, yeah, you got to do your SAQ, right? I feel like lacrosse hasn't established that yet. Lacrosse and soccer in Minnesota haven't established as much of a culture.
Do we need a name, or do we need an SAQ type? What would that be? Yes.
Acronym? Yeah.
Do we need an acronym? We need to develop
you
an
might
acronym.
need an acronym. That might be like if
we got to work on that. Let's work on that. But continue.
Yeah. So there's just culturally, it doesn't feel like there's as much of this embedded. And lacrosse is a lot of travel, right? For some people, they go that route. I personally don't understand. I don't get it, but you guys can enlighten me on it. If why people have to be gone for 4 months out of the year, traveling in airports and everything. So it gets hard then, because then when are you gonna do your training? And so my message to the lacrosse community would be like, there is a huge opportunity on the table for you to get faster, to get more explosive, and to get stronger, and that will translate to being better on the field. And you're better off, like if you look at an athlete, for males, I would say somewhere between starting around 14 and a half, 14, 15. Females, you could go a year, 18 months earlier, because they generally mature earlier. All kids are different. They can be on a different part of the spectrum. But when you kind of hit that, let's call it this window of trainability, window of building athleticism. Okay, where now when you sprint, you get faster. When you jump, you can jump higher a week later, like very small gains that are imperceptible really. But over time, you get faster and more explosive. Lacrosse is an evasion-based sport, just like hockey, just like football, just like soccer. You have an implement and you don't want the other team to get it. So being fast and explosive is really important. And then being able to apply strength or force at those speeds is also really important. And you can become noticeably better relative to your peers if you can do that. If you can sprint a little faster, if you can jump a little higher, okay, if you're a little bit stronger. That is something I think that the lacrosse community right now is underutilizing. And so what should players be doing? It's a really good question. I mean, like you basically, my two big things are going to be sprints. So sprints are going to be resisted, unresisted, and overspeed sprints, right? So we're going to have sprints where we're pushing a sled with weight. We're going to have sprints where we're going no weight. We're also going to have sprints where we're going to hold you back for a little bit. So you're going to have 50, 75 pounds of force potentially as you're trying to sprint through, and then we're going to let go, and boom, you're going to have to go 100%. Otherwise, you're going to even go faster than you're ever used to, because if you don't, your feet, you're going to face plant, right? So your body naturally starts moving quicker. So sprints are number one for me. That's like the biggest thing to be doing. And you tend to actually not do it as much as you think, top speed sprints in a game, because they gas you out pretty good. So you might sprint really fast, but you might be sprinting at 95% of your top velocity in order to make the play, because you don't need to go 100. So especially depending on the position, like if you're in a midfielder, you just may not be, if you're running up and down the field a lot, it's going to be pretty hard to hit your top speed. But we want to bump the top speed up so that your 80% is faster, right? We want your 90% would be faster as long as your top speed continues to increase. So that's one. And then two would be jumps, so plyometrics, right? Sprinting and cutting and all of that requires you to use a plyometric effect. So the ability to come down off a box and then pop back up really quick, get off the ground, not be stuck in the mud. That's another thing that I think lacrosse athletes would really benefit from doing. And then the third aspect would be your more traditional, let's say, weightlifting programming, right? So you're going to be moving weight a little bit. And there's two sides to that kind of coin. You sort of have your functional folks who are like, well, everything should be incredibly functional. We don't want to, everything should look like lacrosse training or like lacrosse. And then on the other side, you have sort of the traditional strength and conditioning people, where it's like back squats and hang cleans and push presses, deadlifts and all that. I personally philosophically kind of come more towards the middle, shifted towards the functional side, where we can do single leg work, right? So instead of having to put 300 pounds on someone's back, we can grab dumbbells and a weight vest, and we can do single leg step ups, single leg squats, and get the same, and in fact, I think a better effect for the athlete. So, and then when we do that, as you get through these ages, right, 14, 15, 16, 17, you're going to gain mass. So when you do it at 10, you're not, 11, you're not, but you're going to gain some strength and mass. That's also going to translate to being able to produce more force, which is going to translate to you being able to sprint faster and be more explosive, which means you're going to have an extra 10 feet in the game next time you play it, which means you're probably, if you're trying to score, you're probably going to be better off at that. If you're defending, you're going to have more time and space to actually be thinking about what you're doing and reading and reacting to plays. So I think more than anything, speed and explosiveness in any of the evasion-based sports make that sport so much easier for an athlete. They have more time to think and more time to process the plays. And a lot of times, and then I'll stop, but a lot of times in sport, the coaches get frustrated because the athlete can't do something or it doesn't see a play. And it's like, well, if they were like 3 steps faster, they'll see the play. But right now, their bandwidth, their mental bandwidth is all being taken up with just trying to stay above water. Like they're treading water. That's all they're doing. So yeah, my message would be get into the gym, sprint. And by gym, I mean sprints, jumps, and strength training, not just
like a literal gymnasium too.
Yeah. Turf. We use a lot of turf.
Yeah.
There's a famous story of a Syracuse, the old Syracuse coach, Roy Simmons Jr. This was like in the 80s, and it was a national championship game, tie game, whatever, and they brought him into the huddle, and he was like, all right, here's the secret play. One of you has to beat your guy and go to the net and score. And it wasn't this X's and O's thing, and it's funny when you're talking about sprinting and explosiveness, so much of all the other things, scheme, like decision making, like you talked about, is like, can I just beat my guy and create an advantage? Or on the I'm an offensive guy, but on the defensive guy, can I prevent my guy from cleanly beating me to create a defensive disadvantage or whatever? So it's funny, like you talk about, there's travel clubs, there's skills training, there's videos, there's a million things, and then there's strength, but it's like, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to like, can you beat your guy and create a matchup advantage for yourself and that's going to make you a better lacrosse player, and that's going to make your team a better lacrosse team. And you could say that about any sport. And like, there's a lot of programs people can sign up for, but they can go run the hill at Brookside, or it's like that. That used to be, with those hockey programs at Jefferson, it was half the time they just were like, all right, put your gear in the locker room. We're walking over to Brookside and running that stupid hill over and over again. Or Normandale Hills, when we were in high school for lacrosse, Normandale Hills had that huge hill. Yeah, so it's interesting, to hear that whole breakdown, and it is just about being faster, being more explosive, and then that leads to better skills, better decisions, and the game slowing down for you, basically.
Yep.
In your so far these years, if they're doing this, which is in turn, and this I mean like all the things, they're sprinting, they're jumping, they're adding their little bit of pseudo functional weight. Are those athletes the one that you're finding, not only are they stronger, but are they a lot less injury prone? Because we have a big ACL issue on the girls' side especially, and I think it's almost competing the numbers for girls soccer. I think like lacrosse specifically is starting to be, I haven't read the articles, but the last I heard, it was like we're starting to be neck and neck with like the number one sport for the ACL tear.
And boys for the those few years, I think it's gone down maybe a little bit, or at least I have personally seen less of it. The back, where they like basically
like a
break
lumbar something.
Yeah, it's usually like an L5 stress fracture.
Yeah,
it has to be the a common sports injury for overuse.
If they're doing all this, which in turn is making them a better player, have you seen injuries go down too?
Yes, I mean, I think that I 100% believe that there's a couple main goals of training, and I think the first one is actually to reduce injury risk.
Yeah.
And that's why in the gym you're doing things that actually are, when you're playing lacrosse, it's the same stimulus, so it's hitting the same muscles and the same joints the same way. And then so let's take an example like shooting, right? So you're rotating through really violently to shoot the ball. Well, in the gym, we want to do anti-rotation work. So we want to have you like keeping your core nice and tight and holding, right? Or do it like being able to move your lower body, but keep your core engaged and keep everything stable, right? Because we know that I think what happens a lot with lacrosse players is they're doing so much torquing on shooting, and then they start getting low back or even upper back pain from that, because their core is not strong enough to really stabilize. So they're moving all over the place, and they shouldn't be when they're doing that. So, and then two, like with the ACL stuff, this is something that's it's frustrating because one, our healthcare system's not set up for preventative medicine, and two, parents I think it's an education issue, but aren't on board with paying for preventative injury services yet and really understanding what that means. So if you're a parent, like, here's the thing, we can take an athlete and we can test their hamstring strength, their glute strength, and their quad strength. And we know that if the quad is, if the hamstring is less than 80% strength, so let's say the hamstring's firing at 75% of the quad, okay? And we look at that score and we look at that delta, and then we have the athlete go onto a bench and we have them jump down and land. And then when they land, their knees cave in slightly. Says, okay, well, now I know right now that athlete is at an elevated risk of ACL strain or ACL injury, tear. Okay, we should fix that, right? That seems something like we should totally fix that. Why do we let that even happen? It's like very frustrating. We could be preventing a lot of these non-contact ACL injuries. Now, some of them you just can't. I mean, they happen. But if we could come up with a system of doing that sort of testing and screening, and then convincing, it's hard, but parents have to realize like that's really important to make sure that there's not this imbalance. I mean, these kids are sitting all day, so their glutes and hamstrings, they're just sitting. Then they head over to practice. They probably don't warm up properly. And now they're quad dominant and their knees cave in when their biomechanics are off a little bit. So when they land on a jump, they cave in. Well, now they cut, knee caves in, boom, ACL goes.
Yeah.
There's
and like you said, like the culture of lacrosse is summer travel. Like that is the talk of the town. That is what people are willing to pay up to 10 grand just to say they're going to the event. And if you're not at the event, you're not doing all these things to show that you're at the event getting recruited. And it's like, I agree that there's kind of that gap of like, if you were in hockey and you weren't doing a summer program that wasn't like, yeah, you get your little on ice component, you get your dry land, like you said, like that's way more. I mean, I guess I know the AAA, but that off season stuff was way more conversational and culturally acceptable of like, what are you doing this summer? Are you doing this camp? Versus it's the opposite in lacrosse. That's not even part of the conversation, in my opinion. It's about what events are you going to, where in Maryland and Virginia are you going to? And like you said, like how many showcases can we do in the 6-month stretch of summer? And it's showing with these athletes when they come back in the fall. How many of them happen in September and fall ball? A lot. I'll tell you a lot. And it's like because August is kind of our unofficial no lacrosse month, but it's like there is a discrepancy of like we don't want to put our money, and even as adults, we don't want to put our money into groceries and healthy food. We want to just go to the doctor and get, whatever. And that's a bigger conversation. We're never going to solve that. But like, that's such an interesting aspect to be like, here's this service and here's all these things you can be doing. That's going to probably cost you actually a lot less than traveling to the East Coast. And we run a club. Like I'm saying this as like a club owner. That's great too. But I hope, and I'm sure you hope that we can try to find a middle ground for lacrosse players in the state to be like, you got to do something. Like it's only going to make you better. It's going to make our teams better, and it's going to make them like more competitive here, regardless of where we go, and get rid of these doggone injuries too.
Yeah. And you know what? The fact is, if you're injured, you suck. I mean, you're the worst player on the team. Like you're the worst player now. Everyone else can beat you. If you're on varsity, the JV girls are better than you, or the JV boys are better than you. It doesn't matter because you're out. And so, as much as possible, like reducing injury has to be a number one thing. My question for lacrosse, for you guys too, it's like, okay, I understand that the hotbed of lacrosse is on the East Coast, and so I understand that going to an exposure tournament on the East Coast could be really beneficial for an athlete because you're going to have lots of coaches there, I presumably. Okay, and I presume just like hockey, there's some that are great, and there's a lot that where it's basically like the equipment manager shows up, from wherever, and they're like, well, that's not actually, they're paying him $500 to show up here and wear the jacket, right? But he actually doesn't recruit for that school. You kind of see this in hockey. Now, hockey's crazier because we're like the hotbed. So like, we're like the East Coast. And so you have these hockey teams that are, traveling to Nashville. I'm like, who do you think's going to Nashville to watch you? Like, give me a break. Okay. And we know the guys that are there are probably just getting paid to show up because, it's their off season if they are a scout. And a lot of times scouts aren't paid. They kind of just like doing it for whatever. So now they can get paid to go to a tournament and wear, the USHL team or the college team that they're working for. But my question would be like, okay, so instead of doing 8 exposure tournaments, which require you to basically just stay on the East Coast, like some of these families, I think they just get like Airbnbs for 3 weeks and you just stay there, run through a bunch of tournaments, come home for a week, and then go back out, right? Can't you just do like, wouldn't you be better off doing a couple and being faster, stronger? I've noticed in the summer, it is really hard to have consistent lacrosse training with our lacrosse players that come into the gym. It's like, hey, I'm out of town again. I'm out of town. Like they never can get like a 3-month stretch of training 3 days a week, it feels like. And that's what you kind of need. You need consistency and you need a little duration. You don't need to go 12 months out of the year, but if you can get 3-4 days a weekend for 3 months, you will be incredibly different athletically if you're in that window by the end of it.
Is there a middle ground where, okay, I play club in the summer. Yes, I'm not going to be able to train, maybe as consistent as I would like. Is there a time frame? Maybe it's the preseason. If we're looking preseason high school, maybe I don't play a winter sport super competitively. Okay, that's my time. I think I heard you say 3 months. Is kind of 3 months the ticket? Like if they start, okay, January 1st to April 1st, if I really dedicate myself to name TBD, we don't have dry land name yet. We don't have our AEQ or whatever. We got to come up with the name, but if I
Yes.
commit to that Jan 1 to April 1, is that where you see maybe the biggest potential benefit here?
Yeah. I think you have, you really have mid-November. I mean, boys hockey starts up next month. So if you don't have a winter sport and you're finishing up soccer or football or whatever, and now you have mid-November to, because lacrosse is going to start kicking into gear with turf time and stuff like. I mean, March does get a little busy. People are going to be looking to get their get their lacrosse stick out a little bit. But up to April 1, you have that time frame. With our program at Fortis, we do what's called a training member program where you can come into our gym as long as you're in that training window. You got to be old enough. And if you haven't trained at all, we start you on private training sessions to get you acclimated. But we do a training member program where you come in after school 4 to 5 days a week. You just come in right after. So, okay, you don't have a winter sport. Well, now your winter sport is essentially building athleticism. You just come right after school. You get your lift in, we track your lifting, your individual progress. And then the one thing that we do that I'm really proud of is we test very consistently. So we test you on your 20-yard dash and we test with lasers accurate to 1,000th of a second. So over time, we see whether you're getting faster or not. And I don't think we've ever had an athlete, and this is not like we have any secret sauce or anything crazy. This isn't actually that difficult of a problem. But we've never had an athlete that shows up 4 days a week in the training window who has not gotten substantially faster. I mean, we're talking like 3 months. We've got athletes getting 0.2 of a second faster on a 20-yard dash. That's a lot because they can only physically probably get most of them. Let's say they're in a 2.8. No one's getting lower than like 2.3. So to get 0.2 of a second faster or 0.3 of a second faster, like 1/10 of a second each month, and then to put on 3 to 4 inches on the vertical jump, I mean, like they basically transform. And they're in that window. So it's, it gets a lot harder. When you get to college, that's, it starts trailing off. For females, it gets really hard, I think, after 20 to get faster if they have trained prior to then. And for males, around then, a little bit later, but it gets hard. So
I was gonna say, when you said like jumping off something and sticking in the mud, I was like, I really resonate with that.
yeah.
I was like, oh, that feels like my body every day.
Yeah, for our training, we're like, hey, you're accidentally, if you continue to show up, consistently, in that off season, you're gonna accidentally get better. If you go to the gym and you're running and you're sprinting and you're jumping, you're accidentally gonna get faster. It's a crazy concept.
Yeah. I wish it were more complicated. Like it would make more sense if it was just like, okay, yeah, work out 4 days a week, but you have to do like the perfect workout in order to get faster. We're talking about athletes here when they're 15, a 15, 16-year-old male, they can get better doing a lot of different things. This actually kind of muddies the science a little bit because it's like if they go in and do like a traditional strength training program, they'll probably get faster because they have done no training. So they're going to get a little they're going to get a little stronger. Whereas they do more of a functional speed program, they're going to get faster. And I would argue they'll improve more than they would on the other program. But just starting out, almost anything will do it, right? You go do core power yoga, like you'll get stronger, right? Because you don't do anything. You have done no training. As you get through the ranks, as you keep getting better and you keep getting faster, things get more specialized to kind of squeak out every little gain that we possibly can. But I think who we're talking to in lacrosse, it's like you have this golden opportunity. It's laying right there in front of you to surpass your competition in 3 months, like significantly. Who's going to take it? And hopefully, there's athletes in your organization that will, either listen to this or the parents will listen to this and realize, okay, that might be worth just doing one less trip. It will actually be like there's the cost of going to one trip to Virginia is probably more than the cost of doing 3 months of sports performance training. Significantly more.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I don't know if maybe PMAC was going to have a separate section for this, but just because we're talking about it, we're talking whether it's skills training for like we do for lacrosse or strength and conditioning, or whatever. Let's say it's a 2-hour workout and you're doing that consistently. Like, what are the big things somebody needs to be thinking about and doing the other 22 hours of the day? Like, what are your most important, like when you think about quote unquote recovery, what are the things that are going to maximize those returns of what you're doing when you're on the field or in the gym?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. One, you have to look at your training volume. And so one thing that people make I think a pretty big mistake on, the one way you can basically come into the gym consistently and not get gains would be like, okay, I'm coming into the gym, but I'm getting up at 6 a.m. to do some skills work. And then I've got my club practice that night for 2.5 hours. And then I'm doing 2 clubs because the one club I'm in doesn't do enough club training or whatever it is, right? Making this up. And we see this on the hockey side all the time. And I'm sure there's lacrosse correlate. So training volume. If you're going, if you're doing a part-time job of lacrosse and gym training, it will not work. You need to look at your schedule in a week and be like, okay, if I'm going to be training 4 days a week in the gym, maybe I've got a couple lacrosse specific things going on during this off-season time as well, but I'm not doing it 6 days a week as well. Like I'm not doubling up every night. You need to have just, the biggest thing with rest and recovery, let's not overthink this thing, is just not doing anything. Like people want to just be able to add more yoga, more breath work, and I'll get to those. But like at the end of the day, it's just volume control. Make sure you're not doing too much activity, and then you will get gains. Okay. So one is training volume. 2 would be sleep. And I've noticed this a lot with kids, athletes now, where they are just on their phones late. They go to bed at midnight. They got to get up at 6:30. That's going to reduce your gains big time. Like especially your mass building strength is going to be really hard to build when you do that. And I have had athletes where, we test frequently. So they come into the gym and they can jump 25 inches. And then 2 weeks later, we're testing them and they're jumping 23 inches or 22 inches, which generally that big of a drop would be like, okay, what's going on? Right. So we say, hey, how'd you sleep last night? Oh, I got like 4 hours of sleep. I was doom scrolling on social media. It's like, okay, well, this jump right now is showing you what happens when you do that. You are like a significantly lower performing athlete today because of that sleep issue. So that's 2. And then 3 would then go to the nutrition. So I think it's training volume, sleep, and then nutrition after that, like making sure. And we have a sports dietitian on staff. And I think that's a really important aspect to the recovery, right? Not overeating sugar, making sure they get enough protein in. Having some healthy meals will definitely help on the recovery side. But I think I would put those as the top 3.
While we're on the topic of recovery, I heard a little rumor this week. You see these facilities at, North Dakota and whatever, these recovery rooms. I heard you're getting, and I'm not comparing your future recovery room. I heard you're getting a recovery room. Is this going to be on North Dakota Sioux hockey level, or what's going on in this recovery room that you're putting together?
Yeah. As you so the genesis of this is as you look at working with professional athletes, and we're working with more and more professional Olympic and college Division I, Division III athletes. Okay. And as we do that, you kind of look at it and you go, okay, well, where's our value? And we try to look at this, like introspectively, like how can we help these athletes the most? And you get an athlete that's 23 or 24. Okay. And we do get guys that still get faster, which surprises me still that they can even still ink out a little bit of a gain, right? They're a tenth of a second or 100, some 5, whatever hundredths of a second faster at the 20-yard dash at that age. I'm like, wow, you're still getting, they're very small PRs, but you are getting a little faster, which is kind of crazy. But the second thing is, okay, if you can play longer, if you can play 2 years more, that's worth a lot of money. I mean, depending on what league you're in, right? If you're in Europe, that could be anywhere between, let's say, $100,000 in total compensation up to $500,000. If you're in the US or Russia, that could be $1 million. It could be 2 million. Obviously, if you're a stud, that could be more in the hockey world. And same thing in any sport. And so we're looking at, and the details on it are not finalized in any way, but we're looking at putting together sort of like a body optimization program, rest recovery, which would include sort of a lot of the modalities that are out there. You have the hyper-ice systems like the Normatec and the Theraguns and all that stuff, which is great. You have saunas, you have cold plunges, which I love personally. I do those once a week, and I think they're pretty impactful. But then I also think on top of that, you have what we're talking about with preventative screening, right? Which can help adults and athletes, because a lot of these problems that we're seeing in professional athletes translate over as well to adults. So T-spine immobility, right? The upper back gets tight. Okay. I'm shooting a lacrosse ball. I'm getting pain in my back. Why? You're locked. You shouldn't be locked there. Okay. I'm an adult. I work at 3M. I sit all day. I'm hunched like this. I get upper back pain. Why? You're locked long. Your T-spine's locked. And because of that, you're starting to get some pain. It might even be low back pain that's starting because of the upper back is not immobile and it shouldn't be. And your core's weak, because you really should have the core, the lumbar spine should be a little bit more tight, and the T-spine should be a little bit more mobile. You have it the other way around. You're loose here and tight up top. So like, these are all things that you have with professional athletes, but you also have with just professionals, right? Working folks, or adults or whatever. And so we're starting to look more and more into how can we optimize the body so that it can play longer professionally and sport, but then also we could translate that over for adults so that they could feel better and be healthier. And we're trying to solve that, over time here. We've been doing some testing with our athletes, like with hockey players. We test the groin strength, the adductor versus the abductor. Okay, this is something we want as part of our recovery outfit, which is we know then if that discrepancy is more than 80% on the adductor, on the groin, and this probably translates to lacrosse as well, there's a higher chance of a groin strain for that athlete. Pretty high chance. I think it's like 40% in one study that they're going to have a groin pull or strain throughout the season. And so how do we do that? Like, because if we can prevent injury for a professional player, that is probably the most valuable thing that we can possibly. You extend a year on $1 million contract. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff like that I love. It's the exercising part that I'm like, I gotta do that so I can get all my recovery stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I was listening to a podcast the other day and they're saying like this year's sleep has just been like taken over. Like we know the science behind it. We know we need to like not look at our phones and stuff. And they were saying that like maybe like she was like, I think next year is going to be the nervous system and like calming the whole entire nervous system down. And like that's causing, it goes everywhere, whether it's a muscle strain. And like you said, even like in my adult, very little athleticism moving life, that I'm like all these things I think from past athletic years, I think are now kind of creeping in as my like life becomes generally more sedentary. Obviously, like, I'm not an athlete. That I was like, I think I'm having these issues because they were never addressed. We didn't know any better. But like I had hip surgery and I'm like, how many times did I pull my groin and how many inequalities did I? I'm lucky I never had my ACL torn, but I'm like, there's all sorts of things in there that I'm like, if these kids could just devote a little bit of time to strengthening, but also then the recovery aspect of just like, just go to bed first. But also like I think that's super cool.
Yeah. I think just modern lifestyle creates asymmetries in the body that we're not meant to have. There's a really good book called Natural Born Heroes. And do
you have it on your bookshelf back there?
I have it somewhere. It might be upstairs. I have bookshelves upstairs too.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I love my books. And I forget, I think it's Chris, I forget his last name, but he talks about like the vitality and the strength and the endurance of Greek resistance fighters during World War II. And how there were like American, I don't know if it was special forces or what, we were kind of coming in and sometimes working with them, and just their endurance to be able to go up and down these mountains and hills. Like they just go forever. They wouldn't stop.
Right.
And, and so you kind of look at it, you're like, the natural ability of the human body is probably closer to that. He makes an argument that even like the world deadlift record was held like thousands of years ago. I forget the exact story, but there's somewhere where there's a monument and it's like, some Greek name deadlifted this boulder and it was however big, it's like he also makes the argument that basically, people in the ancient or antiquity were all like professional athletes compared to how we are today, right? They're super strong. And so modern lifestyle is creating all these asymmetries which then cause joint pain and all these other things that are going on. And so we have to find a way of counteracting it, because the fact is most work as sitting rather
Right.
than,
Farming or
logging up and
whatever.
down
Yeah.
hills with
Yeah. Yeah. Now we need
eggs.
saunas and cold plunges and Normatec legs to just like live my life.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
as Fortis Academy has grown over the years, you've added various things. You're looking into your recovery. You mentioned a nutritionist is on staff. It sounds like you've had kind of the sports training, but you've added other sports throughout time. I think maybe most recently, as I've kind of followed, from afar, you've really dove into leadership training. And I also noticed on your website, hockey film review, which I think is super interesting. Would love to hear more about those and, anything else that, maybe we missed.
Sure. Yeah, on the leadership front, what we've been doing is we have a leadership program where we go into associations and we do a few things. One, we'll do a parent seminar because I think educating the parents is so crucial, and we get really, really good feedback from that. I think a lot of parents at first are skeptical. They think that seminar is going to be sort of like a, hey, be positive, be positive with Johnny, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, just be positive, don't worry about being competitive. It's more the seminar that we put on is, hey, here's the science. You want your kid to be a Division I lacrosse player? We're going to tell you the best way of setting up sport for the association and for your individual, so that your individual athlete, so that they can make it as far as possible, right? And we go through things that are limiters like genetics and all this, so that parents can sort of like take a deep breath and just go, a lot of this is out of my control, which is what I think you learn. The more you're in this, you realize, like, you get an athlete, like a really good athlete in the gym, and you're the best coach in the world. They're crazy good, right? They're jumping higher every 3 weeks. They're sprinting faster. And you're like, look how great our program is. You get a kid in that can barely find his left or right foot, doesn't know which one's which. And they're working their tails off. And I've had athletes like this. They're working hard, right? But they're C-level athleticism, and they're gaining half an inch on the jump. Like they're squeaking forward on the 20-yard dash, but it isn't like the kid that comes in with the natural fast twitch fibers and is just crushing it. So we go in and we do the parent seminars. We do coach seminars where we teach coaches how to implement our leadership program, where we give them curriculum and they do quick hit 5-minute lessons at the end of their practices, starting in 10U all the way up through 15U or 14U or whatever. Lacrosse has some different age categories than hockey. And so we have it basically 3rd through 9th grade, or 4th through 9th grade, or 3rd through 8th. You could do it either way. And so they teach these lessons, and they're unique lessons. So you would have a different set of lessons from 4th all the way, every year through 9th grade. And then we also do a pin system, which is the one that I love because it's super easy to do. So we have 10 pins that represent different values, like hard work, teamwork, humility, perseverance, assertiveness, academic excellence, encouragement of others. And then coaches get those, and then they can award them to players on their team when they exemplify those values, right? And so I actually did this with my son's 7-year-old soccer team in the Eden Prairie Soccer Association. I had a bag of pins. I did the hard work pin, I did the teamwork pin, and the encouragement pin. And I do this for a living, where I try to teach leadership to kids. But for me, even in that context, especially with younger kids, it was really nice to be like, hey guys, here's what I'm looking for. Here are some pins. If you show these values, if you encourage your teammates while you're on the field, if you work really hard, okay, even when it's hard, even when we're losing, and then if you're a good teammate, right? So you might congratulate a guy when he scores, but you also might, pass the ball around, which, by the way, getting 7-year-old boys to pass a soccer ball is darn near impossible. So those are the values I'm looking for, guys, right? Okay, that's what we're looking for. And if you do that, you get awarded one of these pins at the end, potentially, okay? And so then at the end of every practice or at the end of every game, I would bring them in and I would award 1, 2, or 3 pins out to athletes who had exemplified those values. And that was, for me, really cool, because I didn't really know exactly, we've given them to coaches to use, but to have me do it, and then to see my son take them home, put them on his backpack, and then to have one of his friends over and to see him and my daughter explaining to that friend what these things mean, And you don't really know, right? Like, did it get through to him? Like, does he understand why I gave him the teamwork pin? And then you hear them like regurgitating it really clearly. You're like, well, why can't you just do that for me? Why can't you just tell me that? Because that'd be great.
Yep.
So we do. That's another thing that we do is that pin system in the leadership program itself. The mission of it is to saturate the experience for youth sports athletes. I think this is filling a gap that maybe historically wasn't something that we had in our society. I'm not sure how many families, parents, fathers, mothers are intentionally talking to their kids about these things. I kind of think of like John Wooden, where his dad was writing them here's the values that I want, they're writing the values out. And it's like, I feel like that's probably seen by a lot of people as sort of cheesy or weird. And we're kind of like, no, we need to be like, you need to tell them, and you need to tell them again. You need to tell them again, and you need to keep telling them what you are looking for from them from a leadership and character perspective, because it's not the default. And as I say, sports do not build character. They certainly can, but the gladiatorial games in Rome were sport.
Yeah.
So right, how you set it up is going to be the value you get from it. If you're trying to get death and destruction, you can also get that from sport. If you want to have kids that are servant leaders and are humble and work hard, you need to tell them that's what you're looking for, and then you need to reward it, which is why we use the pens and also the curriculum itself. And so, that's something we're excited about trying to, we're not in a lacrosse association yet, but we're hoping that lacrosse associations give it a try. I know it's a shorter season with youth, but I think it's something that would be beneficial and game changing.
No, I love that. And I think you're right. These types of things are not covered at all households, as coaches see on a regular basis at practice and on their teams with kids. The film review, growing up in hockey, when I was a player, film was not utilized as much as looking back. I wish we did. But on the lacrosse side, we did a ton of it, starting in high school through college, obviously. And now, being on the coaching side, we still utilize it to this day. But this hockey film review, I think is interesting for, I guess I'm making assumptions on how it's used or maybe what you guys are doing with it. Can a player just sign up for it and you hook him up with a film coach if he doesn't have one at his team, or what's kind of going on with this?
Yeah. We've dabbled in it. We haven't gone, all in on video quite yet. But what we've done is you can say, hey, you can sign up. Anyone can sign up. We want to do a film review. Most teams they've got either a dad or mom who's filming it for Facebook Live or, YouTube, and then it just gets stored there. Or a lot, especially at the high school level, are using platforms where the students can export their shifts. So whenever they're out there on the ice in hockey, they can say, okay, we'll just say, send us like an hour of film. So that would be like potentially up to 5 games, depending on how much they play. They can export their shifts. And then one of our coaches will review the video, right, on their own. They'll watch the video, take notes, and then meet with the athlete. So you can then go, okay, you can cut out the film. Like, I'm going to go through these 5 specific clips. I'm going to go through what you did well on the ice. Then we're also going to go over some developmental areas, things that you should be thinking about and working on as you go through the season. The one pitfall with this that I think applies to all sports is you have to be very careful to make sure that you are staying in your lane, so to speak. So like, there's 2 blends to it, and the same in lacrosse. You have the tactical and you have the skill. And so you got to be careful not to delve too far into the tactical, because the coach might not want what you're saying, right? You have to make sure you are syncing with the coach. Otherwise, you're going to create confusion for the athlete. If you're saying, well, you should be doing this on the breakout, and then the coach is saying something else. Whereas we tend to look at it more from a skill side. Some of it kind of blends tactically, but it's more, okay, here are several instances where you had the opportunity to shoot, but because you're not getting the puck off fast enough, or the way you're catching the puck, you're not ready to shoot, right? You're catching it, then you're having to load, then you're shooting. You need to be ready. You need to work on being able to shoot it quicker. And you have 5 instances here where you would have probably had a shot on net, maybe a goal or an assist from a rebound, whatever, right? So that's kind of when I look at it, that is the one pitfall that we haven't fully navigated with video that you have to be careful of. And then ultimately the athletes that I think benefit the most from it would be as you get into the college and professional ranks. Okay, we're going to watch a bunch of video, and then we are going to look at that to determine what you need to work on from a skills perspective. And I guess the higher you go and the contractually, the more that athlete is probably making, the more valuable some of that could be. Where if you can improve your breakout percentage as a defenseman in hockey by 20%, I mean, there's so much data like at the NHL level. Yeah. People are going to know if you improve it. And then if you improve it because you've really studied the video and you notice, okay, every time I catch it on my backhand, I'm 30% worse on getting that first pass to the winger. Now I'm going to work on that all summer, and then I improve my percentages. I get another contract. That film review would probably, that costs a lot to do that with a professional video coach, but that also returns a very high amount. I think as you get lower and lower, high school, that's probably like, you probably don't want to, 1 or 2 sessions is probably all that, like, it's like, listen, you have to work on everything. Like, you're not very good. Yeah, you're a stud at your high school, but that's, you're a big fish, small pond type thing, right? Like, work on everything. So I'm not sure how much of that needs to be like super consistent with an athlete. And it's more expensive too, just because it's an hour of time plus setting up a meeting, at least an hour of time, probably 2 hours of video review to really do it right, stopping it, rewatching clips.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know how much film I watch from April 1 to June 15th, and it's a lot. And again, at that, it's mostly team review. And if you end up on that film, it's either a really good thing probably or a really bad thing probably. So so you're not getting, because there's only so many hours in a day, especially during a high school season. Like if I was at the college level, right, that's your whole thing. You can watch film 8 hours a day and meet with guys all week long if you want. So it is a thing that I've thought about on the lacrosse side, like how can we push it out more? But it sounds like maybe it's more at that college level, at that pro level, where there's more value in terms of maybe this program. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm thinking out loud. I don't know.
Yeah.
We can edit that out too if you want, but
yeah. I think there's more value with video as you get higher. I definitely that's the case. But I think a lot of high school kids would benefit from some more intentional video analysis in all sports. Especially I think it's especially powerful for the athlete to be able to see, like, to watch themselves a little bit at the very least, because it's crazy how many athletes, on the skill side, they're like, oh, I'm doing XYZ. Like, I'm skating really low as an example. And then you film them and they're like, that's me. Like, yeah, that's you. You look like a giraffe. Like you look like a flamingo. Get your butt down. And they're like, oh, I feel like I'm low. Then they see themselves and like, okay, I'm not low. And so I think that probably tactically too is really beneficial for kids to be able to see the whole picture and process it.
How do our listeners get connected with you? I'm on the fortisacademy.com looking at, kind of what you got going on, but where do you want them to, kind of head to on the socials to check things out? And if they want to, get in one of your gyms or get connected, how can they do so?
Yeah. So they can go to our website, thefortisacademy.com. Our camps page has all of the opportunities that are ongoing and in the future. So we have all of our gym training, and then and all the camps that we do. You can also just go to the contact us page and send us a note and say, hey, I'm interested in whatever. We have a private training inquiry form, which is under our Fortis training tab. There's if you want to do private training, you can send in an interest form. It asks a little bit about your athlete, what sport they play, and then that goes right to our gym operations manager, who then starts scheduling private training. Ultimately, then, for those athletes that are listening that have parents of athletes that have kids that are in high school, you're really looking to get them into that training member program, because consistency is so key. And very few people are going to go, okay, yeah, we'll pay for private training 5 days a week. And that gets very, very expensive very quickly. Whereas the training member program is something that is more affordable, and you can, a lot of people can do it, and it provides the flexibility to get the athletes in as much as possible. And so that's one way, and then we're on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. We're not incredibly active on the socials. I think you and we've all talked about the value of social media for business a little bit, which is a whole nother conversation, but you can connect with us there and follow what we're doing on that platform as well.
The last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is your alley? This could be something, you're passionate about this week, this month, this year. Maybe it's just a today thing that you read on your bookshelf this morning. I don't know. It can be lacrosse related with you, probably not. It can be serious, not serious, silly. Any direction that you really want to take it, Josh. What is your alley?
Ooh, that's a great question. Right now I've really been into intentional fatherhood. I got this book called The Intentional Father by John Tyson. He's a pastor out in New York. And it's been a really cool experience. I just did a class at my church on it, and it was like a 4-session class. And it's basically this concept of, hey, we raise, for him, he's talking about dads with their sons, but he's also got some programming now that's dads and daughters, and it intermixes pretty well. So it doesn't matter whether you have a son or a daughter. These are things that apply to both. But what I find really interesting about it is our culture sort of, and it applies to sports. It intersects with all of the things that we've actually been talking about, which is, children are basically raised without, in our culture generally, more broadly, right? There are certain subcultures like Orthodox Judaism, or just Judaism in general with bar mitzvahs, where they have certain milestones and ways of culturally bringing up a child, and then saying, at this point now, we are telling you, you are an adult. And as adult, these are the expectations for you. As a young man, these are the expectations that we have of you. And right now we don't do that. And so you see this in sport, you basically have athletes who grow up, and there's no point at which they become an adult. Like, they don't even know, right? Am I a man? Right? Like, I don't know yet. And so I personally have been diving into that and putting some stuff together for my own kids, and trying to find a way of being really intentional about raising them, so that they know what is expected of them, the responsibilities that are expected of them. And I think this is gaining traction with a lot of people. I think it speaks to them, because I know myself, and I think you guys probably say the same thing. It's like, we kind of grew up in the millennial generation, where it's like, everything was about us. The world kind of revolved around it. It was like, you're going to be special. You're going to work hard. You're going to go to school. You're going to get a job. And then you're like, okay. Like, there was, I think a lot of the character development side of things was maybe outsourced or just neglected. And so I'm hoping to kind of explore that more over the next year, for sure.
Super cool.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, check out the book, guys. It's really good. Intentional Father by John Tyson.
Josh, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming down the alley with us. And again, if you're a listener, if you're a player, if your child's a player, and this is the training and things aren't a part of your process right now, check it out. Or if you're a youth association and you want to check out the leadership stuff, sounds like Josh is open and willing and wants to break the ice into the lacrosse community on that side of things too. So, Josh, thanks for coming down the alley with us, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you to Josh Levine of the Fortis Academy for coming down the alley with us. We've known Josh you guys have known Josh forever. 36, I'll say 36. We have known him for, I don't know, last 10 years. We've kind of done, various things with him at times, and, down the alley, we had him obviously speak, at our event last year, and he was a very well attended, presenter. X's and O's are cool, but from if you're a head coach of a program or youth association or even a parent, it's like, okay, what's going to take our program to the next level? I think this is one of those things.
Yeah, we partnered with them a few years ago with our club. So all the high school kids in the club, part of their fall season programming was going to Fortis to their gym in Eden Prairie and doing their workouts. And I remember I got a lot of positive feedback about the program, how they run their gym, the things they were doing and teaching. I thought it was like a lot of positive feedback. It ended up being proximity of like where our athletes were coming from and where the gym was and the timing of like after school. It didn't really work out to continue the program from that respect, but from like the actual what was happening once the kids got there, there was a ton of positive feedback. So, if you can make it work logistically, that member program that they have where you go in after school and do this stuff, I think that would be hugely beneficial to any athlete, especially high school age, that are looking to kind of put a plan in place for April 1, tryouts starting and, what do I need to do to make the varsity team or become a starter or whatever.
Yeah, and it sounds like I don't know if he was mentored by or got a lot of his information from Jack Blatherwick. Jack Blatherwick, I don't know if you know him at all. He's all time. He was a writer in what's the local hockey? Is it Let's Play Hockey magazine?
Yeah.
He was a writer in that for years. I was actually I did a summer program of his. And then my uncles were trained by him in high school. So Jack Blatherwick is all time, all time. He's like a legend. If he and he's kind of if you know, like he's at under the radar. Like I don't think the common folk would know. I don't know what the lacrosse comparable would be. Maybe us. I don't know what the lacrosse comparable would be, but
Got it.
he's kind of at least he was. I don't know how much he's doing anymore.
I mean,
I,
I'm pretty involved in Minnesota hockey. I mean, not really, but I played it growing
yeah,
up. I coached it for a while. Like I follow it, and didn't know who he was. I'm
yeah,
sure if I saw some things, I'd go, "Oh, that guy."
yeah.
But like off the top of my head, I didn't know. So like definitely, I just see him like making hockey kids like carry the buckets of water and like the old school training.
Oh yeah, he had like the sandbags where you're like, doing the squats, the sandbags, and like with the running, you had the
Parachute.
parachute.
Yeah.
So it was super like old school.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, but it works, right? Like that's just like the fundamental, like,
Yep.
hey, we're gonna get you faster, we're gonna get you stronger, and we're gonna make you a better athlete. It's not like, the new tech, like, I don't know. I don't know the training spaces. I don't know who that would be, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, be like more of the Rocky Balboa side.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, I think push-ups and sit-ups, right? And Katie mentioned it earlier on the show of, or maybe it was one of you guys did saying like it, you wanna be bigger, faster, stronger, you want to lose weight, you want to get better. And it's like, all right, diet, exercise, sleep. No, no, no. Like I want the special
Right.
equipment. I want the new thing.
I want the pill.
I want the pill, the shot, whatever. And it's like, well, there just are certain fundamentals in anything that that's just what you have to do. And that's why it's so hard is like Josh said it. I wish it was more complicated because then it would be an easier sell.
Yeah. Then you could sell it.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like you just gotta like work hard and be consistent. And obviously there's value in proper education and proper coaching of like do these things so that you're like maximizing it. But if you just, like you said, put the sandbag on your back and walk up and down a hill and run up and down a hill, if you're starting at baseline 0, you're going to accidentally get better. Now, if you're a Olympic sprinter, that may not work for you. You might need additional things, but
To our listeners, to our listeners, to
Yeah.
our market, to our community. Yeah, if you just, again, obviously this is a wide variety of all of our listeners and of the players and whatever, but like a high school age and younger, if you start training or if you continue to train or you get more committed to it or more consistent, you're going to accidentally get faster, stronger, more athletic.
Yeah.
And we say this on the 36 side for the skills training and for the more the lacrosse specific stuff that we do. Again, in the off season, we aren't going 6 days a week because you should probably be going 4 or 5 days a week in the gym at this time of the year. So, or you're playing another sport or whatever. So, but if you're consistent and you show up every week and you do some skills work, you're not only going to keep your lacrosse skills where they need to be, you're going to accidentally get better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting too, and kind of to close, is that, you know, I don't want to be like a back in my day type guy, but back when I was growing up, you know, coaches would just say, hey, if you want our team to be better, if you want to be better, you got to do things outside of practice. And they left it at that. And now I feel like there's 100 options to do stuff outside of practice that a parent can sign up for. The schedule's set for you. The program is set up for you. All you got to do is just pay for it and get there. And like, it's very much all available to you. Like the friction and the work to have to like set it up is done for you now. Whereas like growing up, it was, you know, hey, I'm going to buy you a net to throw in your backyard, but you have to figure out what shots you're going to take. You have to figure out what time you're going to go out there. You know, now I get there's maybe some people that are anti over scheduling or like with the society that it is today, but to do things quote unquote outside of the season or outside of practice to get better, you can just Google that and you'll have 500 options within a 5-mile radius of your house to pick and choose whatever works best for you, whether it's strength conditioning skills, travel teams, whatever it is. So now it's kind of like all you got to do is just pull up the internet, you know, pull up the browser, figure it out, pull up your phone, sign up and go.
There's endless opportunities, as you're saying, and Coach Kep calls it the unrequired. The unrequired. What are you going to do that's unrequired? You're required to do X, Y, and Z throughout your day, but or you're required to go to your team practice.
Yeah.
What are you going to do that's extra? What are you going to do that's unrequired? And yeah, the overscheduling, that is a concern, and that is obviously, you know, we've gone too far in some ways as a society, but I kind of love that I sign up for Lifetime and there's a class before work and I don't have to come up with my own workout and I don't have to come up with the plan. Boom. Okay. I've got my Lifetime membership. I can go whenever I want, which is great. That's a great benefit. Boom. I've got the class before work. I've got the amenities and I go to work and I don't even have to think about it.
Yep.
I don't have to think. I don't have to come up with the plan. It's just, all right, I have to force myself to wake up a little bit earlier and I get it done.
Yeah. No, it's you're right. I like that. The unrequired that is what's going to that is what separates in any situation, but you know, we're a sports podcast, so that's going to be the difference between the person who's on that first line versus the guy who's a depth player or a third line or a swing guy or gal or whatever. So hopefully players are listening to this. I think that episode provided a lot of value coming from somebody who's not just your lacrosse coach. He's in the industry, but this is a third party saying, you know, a lot of the same things that we preach and your coaches are probably preaching. And so definitely check them out, or at least take his advice, whether you go to Fortis or not. Take his advice about, you know, things that you need to be doing athletically to get better, because that's going to pay dividends in the spring. I think that's, I don't know. Is that good for today? Do we?
I think that's a good enough rant. You know, it's connected to the to the topic of the day. You know, kind of what we were talking about. You know, make sure you're checking out Old Southern Barbecue. Thanksgiving is right around the corner. We actually had a local lacrosse coach reach out to us this week. Again, you can't make this stuff up. We had a lacrosse coach, hey, I know you're talking about it on the podcast, but give me the lowdown. Give me the scouting report on the turkeys, on the sides, on what should I be ordering for my Thanksgiving feast. And when you're gonna order your Thanksgiving feast, or maybe it's some sides, whatever it might be for your Thanksgiving meal or meals, make sure, reminder, let them know Down the Alley sent you. We had a big one. We had a big order. Let Old Southern know that we sent them, and it's well appreciated, because then they know, hey, Down the Alley Nation is supporting Old Southern Barbecue. So make sure Down the Alley sent you.
Yep, that's I can't say it any better. So we'll talk to you on the flip side. We still got a bunch more great interviews coming down the pipeline here to kind of lead us into the start of talking about the high school season. But if you're looking for some high school content, high school lacrosse content, you can always check out our website. We've been writing and blogging about some early previews of teams.
Love it.
And we'll keep her rolling, but we will check you on the next episode.
Can't wait. Adios.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Down the Alley. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and Old Southern Barbecue is smoking up some great deals on turkeys that are sourced locally right here in Minnesota. If you're looking to grab a delicious turkey or a fully catered meal for the holidays, visit oldsouthernbarbecue.com and place your order today. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you.